Yeah, my paper is mostly about the question that was there. It's about to explain or not explain. That's the question. When do we need to explain, or when do we don't need to explain? So we check that, but especially for the effects of personal characteristics, when explaining music recommendations. So this is a joint work. I will present. I have a colleague of mine, it's Nini. My supervisor is Katrien, and we are all working at the KU Leuven in the Augment group. But I also want to thank Cristina for being part of this research and to help me with setting up the study and everything. So probably a little bit more motivation on why did we start this research. So probably you've seen this before. It's in Spotify. If you open it on Monday, you see Discover Weekly, where Spotify makes a playlist for you. And from good source, I know that this Spotify list can cause some frustration. Even for people working at Spotify, they don't always get the good recommendations. It's not always good. Sometimes it's very good, but sometimes, yeah, you got frustrated because it shows you songs that you don't want to hear. And so I was thinking, what's the real problem? So I think the real problem with that is that you have some mysterious input, you have some black box, and then you have some result. And as a user, you don't know what the input is. And you also have no idea what the black box is. And then you have like sometimes a good thing, sometimes it's not good. So what could be a solution? So the solution could be like making a scrutable interface. Yeah, it's discussed by some others that the scrutable interface is opening the black box, but also allowing users to control. That you see like, okay, this is why Spotify is recommending this music, and I also have the ability to change that. So I'm not the first one to come up with this idea. You have a lot of other papers that did this already. Like, for example, you have Peer Chooser, where you can drag and drop different users closer or further away from you. You have Small World with similar drag and drop, where you have different layers of recommended friends. You have a Beyond Rank list that is presented last year at IOI, where you have like, not conference, but you have academics, where you say like, okay, whose people are can be for interest for you. Where you have a scatter plot, where we have some IDs. We also have the sliders, as we've seen, that I picked some IDs for my interface. You also have Set Fusion, where you have a similar recommendation list, where you have the sliders, where you could select some things. And you also have the Intersection Explorer, where you can explore different people and intersections. And then in the music domain, you have the taste weights, where you have the opportunity to select different weights for different kind of music, for different contexts, to see like, okay, these songs are recommended to me because of this. But is that really the solution? And that was exactly the question that was that I want to answer. Is like, okay, but isn't it strange that your grandpa using Spotify and a DJ using Spotify sees the same kind of control, see the same kind of explanations? Do they need exactly the same explanations? Don't we need to change that? And yeah, I'm also not the first to come to this conclusion. These are two quotes from people that presented yesterday, that the rational explanations are only effective on users that report being very unfamiliar. So that was presented yesterday by John O'Donovan. And then we have that there is no one-size-fits-all. There was also a paper yesterday that say, yeah, we need to personalize in some way the explanations. It was also already mentioned in some work of in the recommended system handbook that, okay, personal characteristics really have an influence on attitude of behavior with recommender systems. So yeah, there was also some work on how do personal characteristics influence how people perceive some visualizations. That's also work from a colleague of mine that tries to combine those things and said like, okay, let's try to check which personal characteristics influence how much control you have. And you have other work that check like, okay, what kind of explanations do different persons want? But in general, I think there are two different research domains. Like you have the controllable interfaces, and then you have the personal characteristics. But What I want to do is combine those two. It's like, let's merge these two domains into each other and check like which personal characteristics, which visualizations, which control with explanations do they need. So I had 2 research questions in this paper, and that is the influence of personal characteristics on perception and the influence on those characteristics on interaction. How does that, what's the relation between this? So for the interface, I provided a demo, but I will not show it here because of time constraints, and it can also be a little bit slow because the server is in Belgium and we are in America, and that's a little bit of delay. So what do we have? I think this pointer is working. Here we asked people to first provide an artist as the seed for the recommendations. Then we have 6 different attributes that they could change to say like, I want more happy songs, I want more songs with more energy, that are more danceable. And then they get a list of recommendations. And this list of recommendations, they had a preview that they could play it. They had a thumb up to like the song, and then it appears on the right side where they like the songs or they dislike the song. And then at the end of the experiment, they could export those liked songs into a playlist in their own Spotify account. But yeah, when we first did that, we had like, okay, we are missing something. We need to explain to the user the effects of their changing attributes on these recommendations. So then we showed, here we showed a group bar chart. So these are your preferences. You showed that's the full bar, and the not full bar is like the full bar is the attributes of the song, and the other ones are the ones you selected there. So for personal characteristics, we checked most of the literature about visualizations and what could be of influence for those interfaces. And you have the locus of control because we think that it's important for the sliders. Do you want to have sliders or not? The need for cognition. Do you want to spend effort in checking out the explanations? Visual literacy. Are you able to translate the visual things into knowledge? Visual working memory. Are you able to see visualizations that are on the right side? Can you translate it to the left? Do you still know what those things are? Or musical experience. Are you experienced with music or not? Do you know what those attributes mean or not? So now I will continue with experimental design. For the participants, we recruited on Amazon Mechanical Turk. We paid them $2, and in total we had 71 valid users. But not only those 71, we also had a pilot study where we had 20 users because we wanted to fine-tune the number of songs that needs to be in the playlist, because that was their task. How many songs need to be in that playlist, and also how many recommendations do we give? That was also, we wanted to check that, and we came up in the pilot study with 15 songs in the playlist and 10 songs to recommend. So what procedure we did? First, it was recruited on Amazon Mechanical Turk. Then we provided them some link to our own system where they needed to fill in their personal characteristics. Then they saw a video about how the system works and how to interact with it. Then we gave some explanations because we wanted that everyone knows what the 6 attributes meant. So we gave them some examples about what's danceable songs, less danceable, high danceable. Then we say like, okay, we want you to make a playlist for a moment, like for example, for traveling. And then they see the interface. And after the interface, we asked them some questions, and it was a within subject design. So we did this 2 times, one for the interface with explanations, one for the interface without explanations. And at the end, we had some open-ended questions to get more insights in why they did something or not. So what did we measure? We measured in the questionnaire, we measured some effectiveness, good understanding, trust, novelty, user intention, satisfaction, and confidence. And for the interactions, we measured the times they used the slider, their precision, the number of songs they play each minute, the number of times they clicked on the Y, and how long this was open. So what? To explain and not to explain. That was the question we wanted to answer. So now I will continue with the results, and I think this is the most interesting result, is that here we see we divided the people based on their need for cognition in different quartiles. And here we see that the confidence score, so this is a score on how confident are you in your playlist. You see that if you have a low need for cognition, you have the feeling that with the explanations you are more confident in the playlist. But if you have a high need for cognition, you have more confidence in the baseline than with explanations. That was, I think, a very interesting result, but I will come back on that in a moment to provide you some insight, because that's the reason we had the open-ended questions. Another result we had that in the baseline, they played more songs each minute than they did in the explanations. Possibly that can be because the explanations provide them with some information that they don't, oh, this kind of song, I don't like it, because I know it from the explanations that I will not like it. We also found some effects on visual literacy, where we see that also for a low visual literacy, they played less songs, and with a low visual literacy, they also had a higher precision than with a high visual literacy. And then a last was for the user perception. Oh, I think I showed this already. So then I have the thematic analysis, because at the end we had like a number of open questions, and we did a thematic analysis on these results. From this thematic analysis, we had 4 different topics: explanations, musical attributes, novelty, and the quality of recommendations. So because I showed you this graph, and I said I will come back in a moment, because we tried to explain these results with the open-ended questions we had. So we divided again the open-ended results, and people, we divided this in people with a, we divided it in people with a low need for cognition and a high need for cognition, and we checked what did they say about explanations. And there we see, and it's also a result that was presented yesterday, that if you want to invest time, if a need for cognition, you want to invest time, you want to think about the interface, and then you see that they said, they reported yeah, I don't feel confident anymore because I see the limitations of the algorithm. While for people that don't want to spend effort in thinking about that, they just see the explanations and they are more confident. But I'm running a little bit out of time, so I will go quickly over the next results. We did the same for the musical attributes, and there we see that people, where we also divided it on low and high, and there we see the same, and then we think that people probably, that because of if they want to invest time in it, that they have, that they play more songs. It's the same with the music, that's what the musical sophistication. We divided it in low and high music sophistication, and there we think it's mostly because the people with a higher music sophistication, they know already more songs, so they have less need to play the songs. So for the quality of the recommendations, in the end, some people reported that the quality of recommendations was not so good, but then we checked out, and that were also the people that interacted not with the sliders. So here we see that if people interact with the sliders and with the explanations, that they have better recommendations. So for all people that were sleeping, it's a time to wake up, because now I will come to my conclusion. So my conclusion is that there is some significant interaction effect. So I don't think that these are two separate domains, personal characteristics and scrutable interfaces, or recommender system interfaces. I think we need to come all together, and we need to look for what personal characteristics and what visual techniques and what control techniques we need to provide for which users. Thanks for your attention.
So we have 5 minutes for question. This time I'm abuse my role of a chair, ask the question first. So I think it's really exciting to see that there are personal differences which can affect how we need to explain and recommend and whether we should do it. The question how to do it in practice. The trouble with most of the individual differences can be assessed using large questionnaires. 10, 15, 20, 30 items, and it's interesting for research, but when you ask a person who doing your recommender systems 30 questions, they either don't answer, and if they answer, they expect miracles. And the miracle is actually not coming. So what do you think about getting this very interesting research into practice?
I think that's a very interesting question, and I really want to answer it, and I wish I could provide you with an answer, but I don't really have the answer yet. So one of the things we were thinking is to look to eye tracking to provide some adaptations based on how are people looking to these interfaces. Because that can be probably one solution if we have, they are becoming cheaper and cheaper, if they have like an eye tracking that we can provide some adaptations based on how they look to the screen.
Okay, more questions? To ask or not to ask?
So, how long this took, this study, more or less? It was just one?
It was just one Amazon Mechanical Turk study, and I think most people spend around 30-35 minutes to complete the 2 playlists.
So, have you considered doing this maybe in a week or maybe a month? Because my impression from running several of these studies is that usually you provide a new interface. This is something new. People use it, but then that novelty effect might be decrease a lot over time, and then maybe people just go back to the first initial one, or maybe they will use it, but they will use it in a simpler way. I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think that we are looking into it, how to do it and how to recruit participants that are willing to spend more time. But I think, yeah, there are already some people, some participants still using the system. So I think it's certainly something we can look into it. But we haven't done it yet, the longer term study.
So I just have a quick follow-up on the eye tracking comment. And by the way, thanks for all those citations in that talk. It was awesome. So I think eye tracking for figuring out where people are looking is great, and there's great tools like the Toby and these are the ones that can give us data that we can look at. But the problem is that these people are in an experimental context, and really their looking behavior will probably not map to the real world music listening context or whatever the other application is. Yeah. So I think it would be nice to try and find some proxies, for eye tracking, because it's harder to do that in the real, in real listening contexts. Yeah. And it's kind of an open question, not expecting an answer.
One of the comments on that is that probably one of the solutions I'm looking into is that there is like a webcam-based eye tracking, but I think the accuracy at this moment is not high enough. It's WebGazer. It was published somewhere like I think last year. It's one of the things I'm looking into it if the accuracy improves, because then it's easier to have real life eye tracking data.
Agreed. And then things like mouse clicks and points and other actions that could potentially be used as proxies might be useful.
Yep. Thanks.
Cool.
Right. So we still have time for one question, but Dennis, next speaker will need to set up. Any more questions, guys? Do you have a need for cognition? So ask a question, no? All right. So, so we're moving to yet another